your side of life. The Todd Starnes Commentary.
President Obama is now managing the crisis with Syria from Sweden. One day after he dropped the mess in the hands of Congress, telling them that it was of the utmost urgency to take action, he hopped on board Air Force One and began a few days of taxpayer-funded globetrotting. And now the president is changing the narrative. He announced at a press conference earlier today that he did not set a red line when it came to Syria. Now, this is a shocking revelation because on August 20th, 2012, the president clearly stated he was drawing a red line. The president brushed aside concerns that his credibility was on the line in spite of his ability to bend the truth with such great abandon. Oh, good grief. He said it as clear as day. He set a red line. And anything else is a downright lie. I'm Todd Starnes.
Welcome back. Brain Durham's Nothing But Truth, proudly on AFR Talk. Great commentary. Appreciate it. Todd Starnes, as always. We return with our guest, senior fellow at the Hoover Institution and author of The Wages of Appeasement, among other books, Professor Bruce Thornton. And, Professor, before the break, I set up the question that in 2004, we were pushing ahead. Saddam Hussein captured. We had Gaddafi come out and say, hey, look, I have nuclear weapons, and I've been working on, please, come, check them out, and I want to get right with you. You have talked about, through your work, not only in your articles, but in your book, about the strong hand. And what bin Laden pointed out in his 1996 letter, which would be the strong horse, pardon me. And looking at how things are set up now, 2004, we decided to pull back. We did a Bremer State Department run restructuring in Iraq, and we pulled back from going after Iran and pushing on. I'm sure there was a moment there to say we can address all of our enemies right now because they're in the same war, and we decided not to do that. Go back to September 12th, 2001, and when we talk about post that time, within that year, we had statements like with us or against us. Very clear, called simplistic, but it was reality. We were making gains. We were advancing. From that point, we have, yes, we held Iraq and we came back with the surge. But as you mentioned, Status of Forces Agreement, Biden blew that big time on Obama. So here's the question. We were moving ahead. We were advancing. We were going after Iran. That was the goal. The greatest state sponsor of terrorism, second only to Al-Qaeda, with American blood on its hands. So you tell me, what's the butcher bill going to have to be till we get serious about fighting this war?
Well, that's a $64,000 question. I remember after 9/11 having a conversation with my good friend Victor Davis Hanson, and he said, well, maybe this changes that whole 60s, nonsense. And I said, I don't think so. I think you'll see flags flying for 6 or 7 months, and then pretty soon it will be business back to normal. And you are correct to point out, for a brief moment in 2003 into 2004, when we demonstrated the awesome, brilliant lethality of our men and women in our forces, in overthrowing the largest army in the Middle East, and driving that regime into holes in the ground like rats. And you're right, that got Gaddafi's attention, didn't it? Mm-hmm. And let's add another one. It wasn't long after that Syria, who had been occupying Lebanon, parts of Lebanon for 30 years, decided maybe they should go home. So we had that brief moment where we had prestige. The one thing a great power has to have is prestige. People believed us. They saw what those munitions and what those trained soldiers could do, and they believed it. But what happened was, an election year, Howard Dean got traction in the Democratic primary with an anti-war platform. John Kerry, who had voted for the war in Iraq, flip-flopped completely and came out against it. They started the Bush slide canard. They started the stupid analogies with Vietnam. And they began subtly eroding the cohesion of the people, that this was a righteous thing to do and we needed to do it. And then everything started backsliding. And I'm going to say one thing else, because people are, and I'm one of them, are sometimes critical of George Bush, but I can't think of another president who went against the public opinion as he did in the surge in Iraq. I mean, that took some integrity to do that, but he did. I mean, Bill Clinton wouldn't have, for sure, and surely Barack Obama, when he sent a surge, he undercut it by saying, but they're only going to be there until 24 days, and we're going to pull them out. And so the Taliban said, great, we'll wait till then. So, we had that chance, and then we squandered it by this self-doubt and this political, assassination, character assassination, and this two-bit pacifism, and giving all this attention to these nutty anti-war activists who, by the way, you don't see them much now in the mainstream media, do you? Cindy Sheehan, Code Pink, Medea Benjamin, right?
Yeah,
so,
and not to the degree they were under President Bush.
Exactly. And so our enemies looked and said, there's the America we know and love, the America that we can guilt and intimidate into breaking their resolve. And once you had Obama elected, then you knew it was going to happen. He abandoned Iraq. He's planning to do the same thing in Afghanistan. So there's no deterrent value now. There's no deterrent value because that army's not there in Iraq now, and that army's not going to be there in Afghanistan. And so that moment, you're right. I think that moment was lost, and it's going to be very difficult to get it back. And I hate to say this, and I hope your audience doesn't think I'm crazy, but we need to just be sort of dirty, hairy crazy for a while. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
We need to put the fear of God in people. We need them to think those guys are crazy. They're going to drop a cruise missile in my office, right, and blow my palace to smithereens. And then they will respect us. And then maybe we can get something done, and we can improve. We can improve people's lives there. But at the rate we're going, it isn't going to happen.
And that is evidenced when Richard Armitage, what the statement you just said does get results, because Richard Armitage, known as the Dove, Assistant Deputy Secretary of State under Colin Powell, and he said to Musharraf, if you don't cooperate, we're going to bomb you into the Stone Age. And Musharraf believed it. And that's why we got Pakistan on board. So what you're saying, obviously, I know that you can back it up with history, but that's a little recent history in that way. And what gets me is I was never comfortable with the idea that this is a war based on emotion. I understand the emotion. I feel it myself, believe me, and you do, and all of the audience does when we see what's gone on and continues to go on. But decisions can't be made that way. My reasoning was that I had no problem with waterboarding September 12th, and that's 2001. I have no problem with it on September 12th, 2013, because it gets results, and it is something that we needed to do. And what has happened is what you pointed out in Vietnam, the North Vietnamese, the General Diem, I believe, pointed out, he said, we could use the anti-war left against them. And the Muslim Brotherhood picked that up, did they not? With the project.
My gosh, yes.
Go ahead, please.
Listen, Crane, if you go back and look at Osama bin Laden's writings, particularly the ones that he wants to be read in the West, he punches every flabby liberal button. He even mentions the Kyoto Protocols. What does he care? What does a Muslim in the Middle East, a pious Muslim, care about the Kyoto Protocols? What he said was designed for the anti-war left and the liberals in this country, and he knew that they would become his fifth column, unwittingly, not purposely, but unwittingly their fifth column that would undermine our resolve. That's what he counted on. He says that explicitly. So you're absolutely right. Once that started happening, once you lost that cohesion of the people, then it was all over. Then it was, okay, how do we get out of this as cheaply as possible and get back to, whatever we think is really important.
And, Professor, we will leave it there for tonight.
I'm doing
And on that happy note, or you can stick around and we can go one final segment on the applying it to Syria specifically and the key messages that we need to stress. Like, for example, stop the silence about the persecution of Christians, understanding what we are truly at war with. You're always welcome, sir. I'm throwing that one out to you. Would you be game?
I appreciate the offer, but I got to run.
I'm always
do that
looking for
next
more.
time.
Professor, you're great. Love you. Thank you, sir. Great to be.
Bye.
All right, Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. On the flip side, we'll evaluate some of that. We'll also get your thoughts on it. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, proudly on AFR Talk.